morning everyone! Today, we will discuss our research topic or project named Cassava Biofuel Crop, making an alternative fuel such as Ethanol-Biofuel from cassava together with Mr. Zcyvergen, San Jose, my partner. Our objectives are 1. To know the idea behind the research about making cassava as a source of ethanol-biofuel. 2. Elaborate the process of making cassava into ethanol-biofuel. And lastly, to know the advantage and disadvantages of cassava biofuel. What is cassava? Manihot esculenta is the scientific name for this plant. Well, this root crop or cassava originally came from Brazil, particularly in southern part of Brazil. Manihot is a genus of economically important herbs or shrubs. Esculenta meaning edible or eatable. But I will remind all of you that the root of cassava has cyanogenic glycosides and naturally contains toxic compounds such as linamarin, which makes cassava's root highly toxic or may be fatal if eaten. Cassava is the only plant in its genus group that is grown as a food crop. As I have said, cassava genus is Manihot, and cassava is the only food crop from its genus except from its root. After wheat, rice, and maize, it is the world's fourth most popular grain. Well, we used cassava as our main ingredient in our research project, particularly its root, because we want to use the root of cassava in a useful way where it can still contribute to our community despite having a toxic root. Cassava is a staple food for over 500 billion people worldwide. And lastly, it is the third most abundant carbohydrate source in plant use for food all over the world. The cassava plant. It can reach a height of 15 feet. The leaves and the woody shrub root are the two primary portions of the cassava plant, and both of these sections are food sources. While aside from its toxic root, we can still eat the two primary portions of this crop, which are leaves and the woody shrub, or the cassava itself. The root is available in two flavors, sweet and bitter. It takes between 10 and 30 months to harvest. The root, which is dark brown on the outside and white or yellowish on the inside, is the main portion of the plant that is used as a food source. Asada, yuca, manioc, mogo, and samandioka are some of its other names. Well, in our country, we call cassava as kangus. Am I right? The cassava root is toxic because it contains the chemical cyanogenic glycoside, which becomes cyanide. So processing of the root is so important. Other information about the cassava. Cassava growing areas. In Central America, the Caribbean, South America, Africa, and Asia, the crop is a staple diet. Well, in the Philippines, some of us use cassava as our diet, and some people in the Philippines use this as an alternative for rice in a meal as a source of carbohydrate. Africa is the main producer of the crop, while Thailand is the top exporter. Here in the Philippines, we can see a lot of cassava in public market. Thailand grows the crop for export. Brazil grows it for industrial purposes, and Africa grows it for domestic consumption. In our country, we use cassava as a domestic consumption, but have you ever wondered that we can use this crop as a solution for the inflation of gasoline and fuel for today's society? Well, let's talk about that later. Use of cassava. 1. As a food item, flour. 2. Cassava has been employed as an ethanol biofuel in recent years. Well, this is our topic for our research project, by making cassava as an alternative for the increasing price of gasoline. Animal feed is a large segment of the cassava market these days, often used to feed pigs, cattle, sheep, and other tropical animals. Well, some of the animal feeds are made from cassava, just like other feeds are made from corn. 4. Use as a medicine. Cassava is very low in fats and protein than in cereals and pulses. Young tender cassava leaves are a good source of dietary proteins and vitamin K. Well, it is also a good source of energy because it contains carbohydrates. What is biofuel? Biofuels are energy sources derived from living organisms or the waste they produce. It can be divided into two sections. These are they. 1. Conventional or first-generation biofuels, which are generated from sugar, starch, or vegetable oil. This is where our research project belongs, which is an ethanol biofuel made from cassava starch. Well, this is the first section of biofuel. 2. Biofuels of the second generation, advanced, manufactured from various types of biomass. The second section of biofuel is the biodiesel. Cassava can also be used to make biofuel because it contains starch. For bioethanol production from starch-containing feedstocks, it is necessary to perform the starch hydrolysis, mostly by an amylase and glucoamylase, into glucose syrup, which can be converted into ethanol by yeast named Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Biofuel has previously been made from a variety of sources. Lastly, cereal grains such as corn, wheat, rye, barley, sorghum, grains, rice, potatoes, apple wine, and others are commonly used as raw materials in the manufacturing of alcohol from starch. Cassava is used as a biofuel in several nations. Vietnam, Cambodia, Ghana, Thailand, Nigeria, Africa, China, and Japan are examples. In the Philippines, there are several researchers who conducted a study for this type of biofuel. It is the time we should make a plan and use our resources like cassava to create an alternative fuel, ethanol, biodiesel, other bioalcohols, green diesel, biofuel gasoline, vegetable oil, biogas, syngas, and solid biofuels are examples of biofuels. Fill-of-ground biomaterials is commonly used in biofuel manufacturing. Biofuels can also be made from stem and leaf leftovers. As I have said, the root of cassava is unusable and we should use this to make a useful product by converting it into an ethanol biofuel. So why cassava? Cassava has a high photosynthetic carbon dioxide absorption efficiency, is heat and drought resistant, and requires little fertilizer. It is also regarded as a non-essential food in the PRC. Cassava is a particularly desirable biofuel crop in the country because of these characteristics. Well, we can see cassava everywhere here in the Philippines. We can use this to make an alternative biofuel for gasoline. Cassava is an excellent producer of starch because the fresh roots contain around 30% of starch, which is one of the best fermentable ingredients for ethanol production. Bioethanol is the most widely used biofuel, accounting for more than 90% of overall biofuel consumption. Well, cassava has starch and this starch is convertible to a biofuel. The process of converting cassava into ethanol biofuel will be discussed by my partner, Mr. San Jose, later. Well, if you read the text of the Journal of Dispersion, Science, and Technology book, we can relate on what it is stated. Our country, which is Philippines, suffer from insufficient energy supply, but we have a lot of cassava. Why not we convert it into energy supply like biofuel that will be an alternative for the high price of gasoline in the market? Well, Henry Ford created an ethanol-powered machinery in 1896. However, since then, gasoline and other conventional fuels have taken the lead in engine applications. Here is Mr. San Jose, my partner, to continue our discussion.
According to one study in Malaysia named Techno-Economic and Environmental Assessment of Bioethanol Production from High Starch and Root Yield Zcyvergen 1 Cassava in Malaysia is selected as raw material for bioethanol production due to high productivity and high bioethanol conversion. The comparison of ethanol yield for various feedstock is simplified in Figure 1. As you can see in Figure 1, Zcyvergen 1 cassava has highest ethanol yield because it is high in starch that is needed for the production of ethanol. Research problem: the need for alternative gasoline that is made from cheap materials for tricycle drivers and tubers for Camarines Norte, who are greatly affected by the rapid increase in the price of gasoline, which reduces their income. Possible solutions: making an alternative fuel such as ethanol biofuel from cassava. Research topic: developing alternative gasoline for tricycles using less expensive chemicals or materials. such as ethanol-biofuel made from cassava that has high starch to produce ethanol.
Well, our research project is about making cheap alternative gasoline for tricycles. Nowadays, tricycle drivers are greatly affected by the rapid increase in the price of gasoline, which reduces their income. Tricycle drivers in Tuguegarao, Camarines Norte are one of those affected by the inflation of gasoline. Our research goal is to make alternative gasoline for tricycles using cassava as a material.
Commercial biofuel manufacturing process. The final product of the following procedure is ethanol, which can be used as a biofuel. Cassava is an excellent crop for ethanol production since it produces high yields, 30 to 80 tons per hectare, and thus high starch content. As a result, cassava produces a lot of ethanol per ton. Cassava ethanol output are around 200 liters per ton when compared to wheat, corn, and sugarcane. Cassava roots with 30% starch can produce 280 liters of 96% pure ethanol. Production procedures, materials, tube, yeast, container, cassava, water, pressure cooker. Production procedures. In general, the manufacturing of ethanol from cassava follows a 5-step procedure. These include the following: grinding, liquefaction, saccharification, fermentation, and distillation. Cassava ethanol process. Grinding. Chop the cassava as small as possible or just use a food grinder. Liquefaction. Add the cassava onto a 750 ml water and mix it till the water becomes starchy and strain it. Saccharification. Heat the mixture between 55 to 65 degrees. Cooling down. Let it cool down to get ready for the next process. Fermentation. Add activated yeast to the mixture. Distillation. Run it to a distillation chamber to produce ethanol. Liquefaction process binds the starch molecule to the water molecule, making it more gelatinous. In saccharification, the polysaccharide starch is broken down into a monosaccharide. Then the yeast will help to ferment the mixture that will result in water and ethanol solution. Grinding. The cassava will be chopped and grinded into powder. Liquefaction. Then the powder will be mixed with water. Saccharification converts the starch into simple sugar. Fermentation. The yeast is added to feed on the starch that will result in ethanol and carbon dioxide. Disadvantage of cassava biofuel. Complex process. Special skill required. More labor requirements. High production costs. Cannot be stocked. Short shelf life due to the high moisture content. High perishability. Advantage of cassava biofuel. Help to reduce fossil energy use. Result in less acidification and nutrient enrichment. Help to improve the fuel's life cycle environmental performance. To reduce the emission of the greenhouse gases. Additional activities. Number 1. What makes your study unique? Because in the Philippines, no one uses cassava for ethanol production. Sugarcane and cacao is commonly used in this country. And more focuses on petrol production using plastic materials. Number 2. What innovation you have applied in your chosen study? The innovation that we have applied in our research is social innovation. That includes new technology, strategies, concept, idea, institution, and organization that enhance the capacity of the ecosystem. This will greatly affect our ecosystem by reducing fossil fuel usage and also help on new strategies on reducing the cost of the fuel for vehicles. And that is all for our video presentation about our research project. Thank you for watching.